rolling through 98, more stuff started to happen. More little gigs, another battle, you know, I went to Wellington, go and battle down there. So the DJing thing is what got me in the door, and I started working with Shay, actually because Manuel Bundy, who's another famous DJ in Auckland, is an amazing guy. He called me, and he's like, "Hey man, I can't do this next Shay gig. Do you want to do it?"
Step in.
And I was like, "Whoa, that was my dream come true." I was hoping to work up to that level, and that was the first gig I got DJing for a rapper.
Yep.
I was like, wow, if I could DJ for any rapper in the country, it would be Shay. At that time, he was number one. So I got the gig, and I held that gig for about 3 years.
Yep.
And that's where I started to make some money that could then buy decent equipment. So I got the MPC 2000 XL.
Mm-hmm. And the MPC, it's pretty much the mainstay of a lot of production. Was it again something you'd seen that the people you were looking to were using it, and that?
Yeah, I think so. I think, in fact, I'd seen the 3000 in stock at the Rock Shop in Auckland.
Yeah.
And just gone, this looks like the thing that they use, but wasn't sure if it was the right one. You know,
Gotcha.
I've seen like in studio photos with people like Eric Sermon, EPMD, Def Squad, like guys like that. Just using machines that look similar, but what I found out later was it was an earlier model, like a 60.
The 60 or,
and they'd be using that. But I was like, well, it looks like it. And so I started saving some money, and I was like, well, I've got a deposit. I'm going to lay-by this thing. Lay-by, that's old school way. And so, I rocked up there, but they didn't have it. And I was like, what's going on? They're like, oh, we've got a new one. This new one's coming out. It's called the 2000 XL or something. And I was like, okay, but I'm sure that other one is the one that I want.
Yeah.
But they sold me the 2000 XL, and I got it home. And to be honest, I was completely disappointed and like just gutted. I thought it sucked.
Yeah.
It didn't sound like my little toy one.
Gotcha.
The sound, it wasn't that low sample rate. It
What
was
the 2000? It's glorious.
I
16
think it's a
again or
16 bit.
something?
Yeah, so it sounded like when I dialed my thing up, which is kind of didn't like that
Yeah.
sound so much. I liked it a little bit more raw. So at first I was like, this sucks. But what it made me do was work even harder on sculpting all the sounds, layering kick drums and layering snares and pitching them and tuning things to make it sound full like the old gear used to sound by accident, like, just naturally.
Yeah, because that was it. Was it the 3000? Was maybe a 12-bit or even?
I'm not sure. I've never actually owned one.
Yeah.
But it has a different sound. Those things, they knock a little heavier. The drums are slightly different. And other old gear, like the SP1200, which I eventually got once I made more money. Had to buy that off eBay. Like the retro gear that I was listening to other people's recordings and it had a certain sound. This new gear didn't really have it. But also I didn't realize that it's not just the sampler.
Yeah.
They were also mixing through a SSL discs, and they had all this outboard gear, and they got the world's best engineers mixing their records.
Yeah.
And I'm just there at home in my bedroom,
Banging
straight
away.
out into the speakers.
Yep.
So I started to learn more about that sound and stuff.
Well, that was actually a question that came up. Were you then just doing your whole beats through and recording them in? Were you doing them separately, or like recording the kick and snare and doing anything more on the computer? Or was it pretty basic? You were going onto your multi-track still, or?
I was I didn't buy a computer. I never owned my own computer until 2002.
Yeah.
I'd never had a computer in my house like growing up.
Yep.
I was completely computer illiterate. All I had were these like hardware samplers and tape decks.
Yeah.
And that was my way of making music. So if you think back, like my first co-productions, if people know my catalogue, was actually with Shay Fu on his album The Navigator.
Yep.
And there's 4 tracks on there that I co-produced. So I made those on the MPC 2000 XL, and then took the machine to the studio, and then tracked it with his engineer.
Yeah.
First time I ever tracked beats was at Neil Finn's house. I'm like, where am I? What is going on? It was crazy because Shay was a big artist. He was doing a second album, and he wanted a demo studio, and Neil, I guess, liked him and was like, you can use my studio, and that'll be your demo room. So I went in there and with this beat, and I was like, yeah, bro. And actually, that was even before. That might have been before the 2000, because those old beats that I made on the MS1 and the 660, there's no disk drive. I couldn't save anything. I'd make a beat, record it onto a cassette tape, take it to Shay, go, do you like this beat? He'd be like, yeah, that's cool. And then I was like, wicked. In the meantime, I've made a new beat and had to delete that one, so I didn't have any of the beats. So
let's do something. Well, you've got it now.
So then he's like, yeah, I want to use that. I was like, right. So how do we how do we use it? It's just on the tape, because I'll just bring you the files. It's like, files. Don't really understand this concept of files. I just have the tape, bro. And he's just like, what? So I actually went back and fortunately could remember the records and then sampled it again onto this thing that still had no disk drive. But you turn it had flash memory.
Yeah.
Turn it off, turn it on.
Yeah.
Whatever was last on there is still on there.
Okay.
So I had to go and sample all the same sounds, the drums and everything from all the records, make the beat again, then bring that unit in and then track it. And then he's like, the engineer's like, okay, so how do we MIDI this up? And the engineer's like, Neil Finn's engineer, he's like, rock engineer, plays guitar, doesn't know anything about my world. Yeah. And I didn't know anything either. So we're like trying to put this thing together, man. It took forever, but we put the beat down and it's track 14 or something on the Navigator album. It's called The Natural. That was the first beat that I tracked. It was a mission. But then, not long, like about a week after that, I bought the MPC.
Gotcha.
And then, same thing though, had to make all these beats, 4 beats that I'd done before, but on the MPC, and save them on the floppy disk.
Yeah.
And then I was away. I had them on a floppy disk. Sweet. Stupid, man.
3.5 inch, not the big.
No, 3.5 inch. That's what the 2000 takes.
Fits in the pocket.
Takes those. I got boxes of those at home too, just full of ideas. Yeah.
Are you still using the 2000 or?
Over the last 3 years or so, maybe even 4, I've been experimenting more with different stuff.
Yeah.
So firstly was Logic. Mm-hmm. In 2002, bought my first computer, got Logic, got kind of set up, and started my foray into learning how to use, digital recording software and sequences, and doing it that way. But I never liked making beats on it. But until like 06, 07, it was more a case of I was traveling a lot, and I wanted to make music on the road.
Yeah.
So if I'm in a hotel room, because I'm doing a tour, it was just impractical to take the big gear. Yeah. So I tried to chop up. I was just chopping audio in the arrange window and just moving things around, kicks and snares and loops, and just doing it that way. And then someone showed me how to use a software sampler, and I was like, oh, that's pretty smart. Right. Yep. Okay, I'll use the software sampler. But the best one that I got shown that really got me into using Logic was Battery 3. That what is it, Native Instruments make that?
Yep. When
I saw Battery 3, I was like, cool, that's like an MPC. I want to use this. Yep. So I got hold of that. And I've done a couple beats on there. I don't know if I've used any of them. They've come out, I think, on the new album. Nah. There's maybe like 1 or 2 things that I've done using Battery that have come out. Maybe Angels might have done that. If people know that song, it's kind of a ravey number that I did.
Is there a particular reason? Something to do, just the sound, or just the workflow that you find?
I find the workflow on Battery 3 specifically to be quite awkward and kind of long. There's too many steps from recording some audio or importing some audio and then chopping it and then bringing that into Battery and then sequencing.
Okay, so you're sampling off records and bits and pieces and then dragging those into...
When speaking of like doing that, doing it that way, which is 9 times out of 10 how I start stuff. It takes long, man. Even if I've already imported the audio, whether it's from a CD or a download of something, or something I've recorded out previously. It just takes long to get it in there, and then I don't know if it's just me, but it's real buggy. Like the version I got just crashes a lot, so frustrating. So there's that, and then they came out with the 5000, the MPC 5000, big one, the black one. I thought this might be cool. This might be the answer to all my questions. Spent a ridiculous amount of money on that. Got it home, went, it's slightly cooler than the 2000. It's got its own hard drive, like an internal hard drive that's really big. It's got mute groups, which I find really useful for chopping really quickly. But besides that, it's really not worth all the money. Yeah. It's got a big screen on it. That's kind of cool. So you can see what you're doing. And for something that is limited to just being hardware, you can't, it doesn't sync with the computer. You can't see what you're doing on the monitor. Yeah. Then it's cool because it's a big screen. You can see when you're chopping WAV files and doing all that. So there are some benefits, but only if you can get it secondhand for cheap. I wouldn't recommend that. And then... what else? I just got, 2 weeks ago, I bought Machine from Native Instruments. Now that seems like, although I still haven't made any music on it, it ticks all the right boxes. Yeah. As far as being a really perfect blend between hardware and just that workflow and software and all the benefits that has of being able to browse for your sounds and fine tune
Quickly
your
save
editing
things,
and
load
quickly
things,
save
yeah.
things and load things, and just being able to see it all on a big monitor, you know,
Yep.
see your whole song. Whereas if you're coming from that older mindset, you're just seeing your song on this little
Yep.
LED screen,
Mhm.
you know, and I'm like, oh, what's the next sequence in my song, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it just, yeah, it's pretty cool. But like I say, I haven't made any tracks on it yet, so check me in about a month. I'll let you know if it's actually as good as I
We'll
think
get the
it's going to be.
review
It could be awesome.
And have you found the way you work has changed a bit as you've tried the different bits of equipment as well, or are you kind of moulding the equipment to the way you work, or do you find it?
Yeah, I
you know?
guess I try and take the gear and bend it back into my way
Yeah.
of working, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm a bit stuck in my ways, but because I started so early on and developed a certain technique around these other machines,
Yeah.
my brain works that way.
Mm.
So it's hard for me to, like, I try to use Ableton. I experimented with that for a while, and it's so backwards to the way I've learnt how to make music
Yeah.
that I find it really hard. Whereas other people might adapt to that straight away
Because
if
that's
they-
what the first
Yeah.
thing they've used, or they
if
just,
it's the first thing they've used,
Yeah.
or they come from a different
Yep.
approach. You know, that's why I think different software and different machines suit different people, you know, in different ways, because your brains work different. It's like
Yep.
some people are Mac, some are PC. Well, nowadays that's probably not as big a thing as it used to be, but you know,
Yeah.
but you know, different.
Logic
different,
and Cubase.
Yeah, Logic and Cubase. Like my engineer, I use an engineer for most of my recordings. Evan, he uses Cubase.
Yeah.
I use Logic. So we're just opposites,
Mm.
but we achieve great results. Like, you know, I do my bit and then send it to him, he does his bit. So,
Yep.
yeah.
So that's Evan as in Evan Concord?
Evan
Or
Short, ex Concord Dawn.
Yeah.
Yep, Evan Short, also a great guitarist and very talented guy.
Yep.
Yeah. All through my career, I've used recording engineers, and I think that's because I was maybe fortunate to work with Shay in the start,
Yeah.
in the first instance, and see how he worked. And he makes some beats,
Yeah.
but he's not a beat maker.
Yeah.
So he would rely on the engineers that are around him to kind of fulfill his ideas.
Yep.
You know, he'd be
Yep.
like, this is how it goes. We bang it out, or we program it to a degree, and then the dudes would flesh it out, and musicians would come in and play, and the engineers recording all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm going, cool, there's an engineer. I need to get an engineer.
Yeah.
Because I can program my beats and make the song, and I know how it all should go, but I don't know how to use all this. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know how to use the desk. I don't know how to use compressors like super well. Like all the outboard stuff was foreign to me, 10 years ago. So I was like, I need an engineer.
Yeah.
So I've always done that. My first solo album I did with Chris Chetland at Cog Transmissions. The Cog Studios used to be in Kingsland.
Yep.
He's worked on tons of electronic music. So I learned heaps from him, because he was a total whiz on Logic, and I hadn't even used the computer at all. So I was like, sweet, bro, I've got the beats, boys got the raps, I know what's going to happen in the chorus, but we need to record it all. And I was, directing what was going on in the studio, and he'd just take cues from me as to the style.
Yeah. Sure.
Like, so he'd like mix a drum kit a certain way. I'd be like, that's completely wrong.
It's not gonna. Yeah.
Yeah, you need to break all the rules that you think you should be doing and change it to my style
Yeah.
so that it sounds hip hop.